Hello and welcome to this alternative gallery talk, our first for this exhibition, And I Must Scream, at the Michael C. Carlos Museum. I'm Amanda Hellman. I'm the curator of African art here at the Carlos, and I'm joined by Ganzeer, the artist who produced Macabre by Design. This exhibition is one that is a little different for the Carlos Museum. It features 10 contemporary artists who use monstrous, grotesque humanoid figures and forms to give shape to some of the most pressing crises that we face today, from environmental destruction, human rights violations, governmental corruption, the pandemic that we're all still in the midst of. But it ends on a note of hope and in the idea that maybe we can take control of the monster and use it for love and compassion and renewal. We are filming this gallery talk about a week before we'll show it, and what's kind of interesting is that the work that we're going to feature today is still in process, that some finishing touches will still be done. So now, even though you've seen the gallery talk, you definitely have to come to the show because by the time you watch it, it will be all completed. So I want to start today, and we're just going to have kind of an informal conversation, but I want to start by asking you, Ganzeer, to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you made it here to Atlanta.
Well, I made it here to Atlanta because you asked me to come here and participate in the show. A little bit about me. I was born in Cairo, Egypt in 1982. Practicing artist, everything from painting to printmaking, drawing, comics, a little bit of writing here and there. And I've been living in the States since 2014. Just have moved around a bunch, New York a bit, LA, Denver, and now Houston, where I'm based.
And can you tell us a little bit about the work itself? Can you tell us a little bit about the imagery that you used and really how you sort of thought about the elements and themes of the exhibition in order to create your design?
So yeah, I like to do things that are very much connected to the circumstances in which they are created. That you could really see that the result is kind of not forced in a way, and it really is part of a big part of informed by the circumstances, right? So so there are a few key things coming into doing this that definitely informed the work. One was the form itself, right? That the fact that it's sort of like a gateway, right? The other thing was the subject matter. So I knew there was a lot of kind of body horror-esque works kind of going on, from the material that you showed me. And I knew that it relates to a lot of the anxieties that's used as a sort of like an expression in regards to a lot of the anxieties we have today as societies, So right from the get-go, I knew that I wanted to utilize the top part, this winged kind of motif, because it reminded me a lot of ancient Egyptian temples, where oftentimes you do see kind of a winged sun disk. So I knew I wanted that there, and I knew that the idea of replacing and of taking what is an ancient kind of sacred symbol and injecting something more contemporary there made sense. And in this particular example, I decided to utilize two different depictions of a young man by the name of Khalid Said in Egypt, who was brutally murdered by police. I think it was in 2010-ish or so, if I do recall. And kind of that was one of the impetuses, right, that led to kind of the Egyptian upheaval and uprising. that took place in 2011. So it did certainly start as a kind of an anti-police brutality protest, and it kind of grew from there. And so, you know, there were two images that were popularized at the time. One was a kind of a before being brutalized by police, like just a studio picture, and then the other was the after. So, kind of the result and kind of almost the disfiguration, and how you almost, it's impossible to kind of associate that they're both the same person. And the horror of that was kind of what got people riled up. And so, yeah, so I just used kind of the kind of yellowish, greenish pigment paint for this kind of ghostly depiction of him in the past, right? Like his usual self, and then taking that picture and turning it into an almost graphic icon of sorts, right? Trying to make it into, give it a kind of graphic treatment with as minimal lines as possible, because he did rise to become an icon in a sense in that moment, and you could tell that it was as close to kind of becoming a sacred almost symbol as possible in the modern day, in the modern era, you know, and almost this mythologizing this his person, his character, and so having him kind of within a sacred kind of motif kind of made sense.
I think what's so powerful about that for me is in part because ancient Egypt, which is just certainly in this museum, is just a big part of how we frame our understanding of the world around us and history, but also the way in which, you know, in recent history, Egyptian leaders are using that imagery in order to sort of create this lineage to ancient Egypt, which was, you know, totally, you know, contrived, right? This idea that there was 3,000 years of continuous rule, it was done in a sense through propaganda, through the use of images. And so the idea that someone like Mubarak is going to, you know, pull on that is to legitimize his own rule. I think, you know, on the one hand, yes, it's maybe a powerful way to establish a regime, but what I thought was so maybe hopeful, but really I just felt like there was so much momentum in 2010 and 2011, in part because I felt as though you know, artists and, you know, everyone who was protesting was in a sense using that same weapon against the regime. And which is how I came to your work, was, you know, looking at the murals that you were producing and the sort of propaganda that you were producing as well. And so I think it's one of the aspects that's super powerful is the fact that you're able to sort of, you know, take a hold of that weapon and turn it towards them. And it builds this sort of international, not just compassion, but a new entry point to really understand what's happening. And so I think that, you know, using this in this particular moment, again, with the architecture so that it is monumentalized in that way, I think is a really powerful tool, again, to sort of, you know, just turn the table and sort of make us look at it from the other direction. Especially where in some ways that 10 years of that's passed, right, that 11, 12 years that's passed, almost feels like old history in some respects. And so this idea that it is sort of mythologized, I think is a really powerful way to sort of think about how we're all connected to these different moments and these different things.
100%. And there is something to be said about how, you know, what's the saying? Something rose-colored glasses, whatever. But there's this idea that everything that is past we do see through rose-colored glasses, and it's kind of there is a kind of that effect of nostalgia is always kind of a positive thing, which isn't actually true, because I think how we view historical events, even ones that we might have actually participated in ourselves, has a lot to do with the narrative that comes around it, about it, and that we're surrounded by as the years progress. So, you know, if in a, you know, if you have gone through an experience that at the time you thought was positive, it could be something totally trivial. You know, maybe you had just a wonderful time with you know, a boyfriend or something, right? And everything was great, and you remember it as, oh, it was so great. But then maybe like everyone around you is just like kind of just shit talking this person, you know. Can I say shit? Okay. All right. So everyone around him, everyone around you is just talking to this person, and then there's all this negative spiel. Then maybe you start to see like this whole experience as something negative, and actually that's kind of what's been happening with, I think, the mass consciousness within Egypt in regards to the Egyptian revolution, which at the time was a euphoric, very positive experience and very hopeful. That now it's kind of the current regime, if you will, has been able to kind of weave a narrative that is very negative about it, and then everyone looks at it like, oh, it was just like so wrong and so bad, and you know, they've also managed to kind of create all kinds of conspiracy theories as to why it had happened, and convince people that they were actually part of a huge plot that they had no idea they were part of, and all this, and then so everyone, you know, it affects the way you see it. And so I think battling that narrative with other narratives is important for, you know, for history's sake.
Right, I'm thinking of the procession of the pharaohs this spring, right, which was this, you know, huge deal. They took how many, maybe 15 pharaohs,
like mummies, yeah.
Yeah, you know, through the streets. And it almost felt like the opening games of the Olympics or something. There were lights, there were tanks, there were all sorts of things that were. It was a big show. Right?
It was a big impressive effort and big show. And I wonder what, you know, if they could put as much effort into things like, you know, infrastructure.
Right. But that just doesn't have the same sort of emotive response. And so, I mean, I think it absolutely right. I mean, and that's part of what this show is really thinking about, is the way in which narratives are made accessible that don't necessarily connect the dots for us, and don't show the way in which we're connected to all of these different you know, things, that it makes it really hard to be well informed and to really understand, you know, your place in the world, and the impact that you have. But maybe the alternative to that is that many of us don't have this major impact, right? And that we are just trying to live our lives, and that we have to make sure that we're not living them in a way that does perhaps negatively, you know, impact or contribute to something that we don't want to contribute to.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about impact, I think I've come to the, you know, as a 39-year-old man, my thinking is very different from, you know, when I was a 29-year-old man, and so I think, I don't know, when you're younger, I mean, especially, I mean, maybe it doesn't apply to everyone, but like I think for me, you know, late 20s, so you're sort of like you have a little bit of the you still have some of the energy rebellious kind of flame and maybe naivete of a younger teenager. You still have a little bit of that with you, and maybe you have a little bit of the forthcoming wisdom that is to come that you might have as an older person. You're kind of in this in-between area, right? And but you do think you have the wisdom. But even though you don't, so you think you know everything, and that is coupled with this rebellious energy. And so you go off doing things you think you will change the world. Now, I'm not trying to put people down or anything, but now I don't think it's about changing the world in any direct way. It's not like this work will change, it's created and then all of a sudden the world will just change all around it. For me, it's more about realizing that, of course, it's just one painting, it's one mural, it's one graphic novel, whatever it is, right? There's no way it'll change the world. Right? It doesn't have, how many people are there in the world? However many billions. Are the billions going to be exposed to it? Of course not. So as such, you have to understand your limitations, but you still want the content of the work to be of that mindset.
And maybe integrity.
And integrity, yeah. Only because you don't know how it will affect the few who see it. Mm-hmm. So it might change the world, but in a very indirect way, right. Because someone who might see it might take something from it and go off to do something else, and that something else will influence someone else, and so on. So this idea of very indirect kind of just
and you may never get the credit for it,
and
right?
And that's totally fine. But the idea is, is this desire to change the world through affecting the people who see the work and motivating them to do things that will hopefully contribute to that, I guess.
I think it's very true. I mean, I think that who are the primary agents of change are legislators, right? Are politicians who make the policies,
which is a very sad realization, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that the sort of way, and it's really are you able to start to affect them? And maybe the art can make them think about something differently, but what it also can do is make everyone else who sees it think differently and maybe be inspired to act and insist on change, things like that. So I think it's very true. You have to be a little bit more patient. And I think especially working in the arts, where I certainly think of the arts as a space of social activism, but I think it is absolutely right that you sort of have to be more patient and model strategies for thinking and seeing and looking critically, which is really about how maybe you start to open your eyes and think about the other ways in which we're consuming information.
For sure. I don't want to tell people what to think when they are exposed to the work, as much as I want them to start thinking about things that maybe they wouldn't have thought about otherwise before seeing the work, and then maybe they reach their own conclusions, and that in and of itself right. is a great thing to do.
And not to make you talk about your work and tell them what to think about your work, but we also have sort of larger imagery here that I wonder if you could elaborate on as well.
So I came across the image of a toddler skull, which is kind of freaky as hell because it's got all kinds of teeth going on that you don't realize are there under the toddler's face. But at the same time, I was surprised by my reaction of being freaked out by it because, well, I was also like, well, on the other hand, it's like such a useful and clever design because, they're ready for adulthood from the get-go in a sense, right? Not only kind of physically, but maybe somehow there's some kind of metaphorical idea there or metaphysical, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but conceptually, you know, they're ready for adulthood in a sense. And that, seeing that image, you know, was around the same time after a few months of having my own son. So actually this boy, this image is my own child. And so also it had to do with kind of thinking about him being brought into the same world that has Khaled Saeed murdered by police, right? And I guess and that is just like one example of, I guess, the many horrors that we do live with in the world, if we do stop to think about it. And so kind of I suppose it poses the question of I don't know, is this his fate? Is that the fate of the people, the children we bring into the world, to end up like Khaled Said and others like him? Or are they just like inherently prepared to deal with that sort of thing? I don't know. It's just it's more of a question piece than a statement piece, I guess.
I mean, I think it's a really powerful conversation, though, that's happening, because it does make us think about certainly our own mortality in this sort of vanitas way, right? Which is the common trope in Western art, for sure. That is so, in a sense, disturbing, right? To sort of be faced with death in that way, in this sort of beautiful way. And I think that when you look around this particular gallery, one of the things that I really noticed is the way in which the sort of skull is used, again, in this sort of captivating but grotesque way, and by also comparing it and juxtaposing it to something that is, you know, the sweetest, you know, baby's face, right? Or, you know, as you see in Thamir Medri's work, you know, a you know, Chuck Taylor high top, or a toy car, or a toy tank, that you have this sort of, you see the horror almost even more. You see what's underneath this sort of beautiful, sweet face even more, and there's something that's really unnerving and uncomfortable about that. And it's sort of grotesque. It's not human, right? When you have two layers of teeth. And yet, at the same time,
very much is.
It is, right? Absolutely.
It's not the side of humanity that we necessarily are aware of, or something, I guess.
But I think it's really fascinating to also think about the fact that everything they need is right there, is you're totally prepared for becoming an adult. And in that same way, one of the things it was making me think about is how sort of leaders that we maybe revere or revile, right? Say Winston Churchill and Robert Mugabe were also once, you know, these children, and they had these, they're someone's child, right? And they had these origin stories. They crafted these origin stories that essentially, you know, suggested that they were meant to be leaders from the very beginning. And that, in a sense, I mean, some of this is also that your destiny has already been mapped out for you in a way. And how do you fight against that? How do you, you know, craft some sort of narrative about who you're supposed to be or where you came from? And how does that also, is that a tool that sort of can be used for good, can be used for bad, can be used to fight injustice, can be used to create injustice? Because in the same way that, you know, you hope somebody has the tools they need to fight, you know, oppression, there's, you know, somebody with the same setup, the same skull, the same, you know, makeup that is going to create that
That's true.
system.
I think it's important to acknowledge, like, our limitations, right? So I mean, that other person who is creating what is arguably an oppressive system, and it's probably not just a person, right? We're talking about like probably something that is generations in the making and result of so many factors that went into like the making of that. But at the end of the day, like, you know, that system, right, is a lot of things. You know, it's policymakers, it's businessmen, it's militaries, and it's global, right? Like militaries have exchanges with each other, business people have big, you know, operate on an international scale, and then at the end of the day, if you're just like, you know, just a person in a town, I mean, you know, it's important to like, it's not, I'm not saying like that means you have to like be okay with the way everything is. You could still express your just discontent with it. That's as much as anyone can do, I guess. You know, and then, you know, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. How do you think your understanding of the sort of the role of images in making a statement, in communicating with others has changed, you know, over the course of your career? I mean, you are in the middle of, you know, an incredible graphic novel. You're, I think, exactly halfway through, right? So you've sort of seen it both from this sort of inception, and now you're sort of in the middle. You've got the ideas, and now you have to figure out how to get it out. Yeah. And so I just wonder, you know, I mean, that's an incredible experience over time, that you can start to see how, you know, making meaning is different. I think I've been working on this show for 3 years now, and my understanding of the material, both the work that has been produced and the work that's in the show, but also the way in which I can frame it has changed so much. I mean, even in the last week, as I see new work go in, you know, I start to understand things in a very different way.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is, so I used to, I had some experience early on as a young man, doing kind of commercial graphic design, branding kind of related work, very commercial sort of stuff. And you know, a lot of friends of mine who you know, went to art school, studied art, thought they would become artists, ended up working in advertising as art directors, or, you know, kind of film directors within the advertising context, you know, so on and so forth, storyboarders for ads, whatever. And so you realize that all these entities rely on the work of artists. Whether we want to call the end result art or not is not the issue, but the people performing them are people with certain skills, certain artistic ability, and they and these things would not be able to be exist and be sold and be consumed without the work of artists. And certain things would not be considered better than other things without the work of artists. And the same applies not only, you know, to products and services within the commercial context, but also applies to you know, nation states and the sort of narratives that they weave about themselves to make the citizenry of these who fall within these particular borders feel that they are better than their neighbors and greater than them for whatever reason. I mean, and again, they rely on artists to do that through the creation of song and the creation of imagery and you know, architecture and so on and so forth. And so And so, it's apparent that the work of artists is integral to the existence of a lot of things that may not be very good. Just say that. And so, and it's almost as if I'm not sure that the artists who go into doing these things know that they have so much power. They do it to make a buck, so they can put food on the table and feed their kids, and that's pretty much it. And that's the extent of their motivation. They might convince themselves that they're motivated by more just so they don't feel terrible. But in reality, that's kind of what motivates a lot of people to do what they do. And so I feel like once you realize that as an artist you have so much power, then you could certainly, I think, if you have the desire and the motive, take it and utilize it elsewhere for something that hopefully you actually believe in.
Yes, I mean that's kind of what we all hope, right? That we're sort of developing these skills over time, right? And then we're deploying them in more positive ways. But I think it's, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday too. I mean, it's not necessarily quite so contrived, right? That you don't necessarily know how you get to where you are, or how you've gotten to where you are, right? And how you can sort of move and navigate the systems to get to where you think you want to go. And so, sometimes I don't think it's quite as, it's motivated by something as simple as a paycheck rather than your sort of moral compass.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was doing all that branding work, I thought I was doing it for, for very noble motives, for very noble reasons. Like, oh yeah, because I'm like enhancing the general design taste of society, or whatever it is, right? You kind of you give yourself a reason. But then, when it was really the revolution, when the revolution broke out in Egypt, I had done like other kind of art within the gallery context before, but in, coexisting with all the commercial design stuff. But when the revolution broke out, and I actually had like work to do, that kind of work for hire design work, and I realized like I just didn't really care about it actually. It wasn't really important, right? So sometimes it takes like a big thing for you to realize whether what you're doing at that moment in time is actually important to you or not. Right. Before deciding to abandon it,
I think one of the other sort of powerful things that that I was really thinking about, with the Arab Spring, and I don't know if it was this, I was sort of connected in a different way because I was working on the continent. I had friends who were working in Tunisia and Morocco and Algeria and Egypt, and so I was interested in a new way. There was something that really was not just scary about it, but also very hopeful. And I think in the last decade, since then, we've also sort of experienced that same sort of fear and hope, these contradictions of emotions in so many different ways, that I don't know that I necessarily believe my own sense of hope and my own sense of fear anymore, especially after the last 2 years and the last 5 years. And so I'm sort of curious about how that's sort of embedded in the work that we're looking at as well, right? That we can't just sit in this and sort of wallow in this space of torture and fear and hopelessness, and that, really the best combination is when you can sort of throw in a dash of hope and hopefulness with some of these things that could freeze us in the moment from doing anything at all. And I think that, looking at these, juxtapositions again, it's sort of, it's embedded in all of this, right? In this sort of center for human logic and understanding and emotion, but is also kind of scary and morbid and macabre, in this kind of strange way that it's all sort of wrapped up in there.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I could say, okay, so I look at this and I feel fear for my son's future, and the next generations in general, really. But at the same time, I look at it and I feel a kind of hopefulness because they are sort of possibly prepared for the things to come.
Well, that's a really nice sort of note to sort of end this conversation on. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a wonderful time with you for the last 10 days, and this mural, this piece will live on for much longer.
My pleasure.